Hi. Yeah, welcome back to Tip 12B, Elections on the Political Spectrum. I'm going to take down this here because I think there's a shine, a very white background on that background sign. You saw it there anyway. And I think it actually makes it a kind of a glare off the video. So I'll just take it down for now in the place I am at the minute. I call it my studio. Anyway, what I'm going to look for here is what I'm doing here is Elections 12B and the Political Spectrum. I'm going to take a look at it. Now, there used to be a time when you go to a pub and there'd be a notice up, no talk about politics or religion. And clearly the publican felt that was a good idea. Personally, I don't mind about the religion part of it. That's all right. But the idea of that there's no discussion about politics, well, possibly because people with drink got high about politics. Why they would get high, I don't know. Maybe that was it. But then that stifled debate, and I don't know was that good either, because people might learn a bit. But if you look at it like as a policy, it meant that the conventional parties were protected from discussion. And I happen to believe that, politics is everything. It determines everything. It just rules your entire life. And you can't get over the fact that there's a government and there's other people in this world, and they will form governments to rule over you, and there has to be checks and balances to make sure that what happens is something near which you find acceptable. Now, one of the things about life, don't forget, the human being evolved to exist in groups of about 150. Our ways of identifying people and recognizing people is meant to be limited at about 150, 200 people. Our brains are not designed to know millions. I must know 1 million people. And it's a fierce storage. If it was a computer, your head would be full of names. Really, that's not how we evolved. But anyway, as you have government, you have this eternal debate about how much of the ownership and wealth of the country individuals should be allowed to have, and how much of it should be run on behalf of the community. And so this socialist versus capitalist model is pushed and has been central. And it's all about those who have nots trying to get something from those who haves. And this is a very good debate, but the only thing we have at this stage, 100 years on from the Bolshevik Revolution and the implementation of some of these guys like Lenin, Marx, Trotsky's, all these guys, we have now a knowledge of how it works. We now have a good idea how it pans out in reality. Because 100 years ago, you'd get it very hard to explain to even any semi or moderate socialist that the state running everything doesn't work. And of course, a lot of people feel inadequate, and they feel it's nice to have the state making decisions for them. But one of the things that developed was this political spectrum. And this is the conventional view. You had the left, the socialist and the communists here, and you had the right, the rich people here. You had capitalist ideology running, and you had the left. And don't forget about the right. If you were rich without the state, you would need to keep an army to protect your riches, because it would be taken off you. And that'd leave you poor very quick. So the rich people in our society have the benefit of the police, the prisons, and all of that plugging for them to make sure they can keep their wealth. But in return, the state tries to take some of that wealth in taxes, and it tries to redistribute and become involved in the running of transport, telecommunications, electricity supply, etc. And over here on the left then, there is this view that the state should run everything, look after everything in life. But of course we know the state is the worst of all. As Ronald Reagan said, the most terrifying words in the English language are, "I am from the government, I'm here to help you." And they are terrifying words. They're you just get inefficiency canned. You get it as standard with the state, and that can't be fixed. And the funny thing about this spectrum is, I'm trying to get it right in the camera here, I believe it came from, is it the French Parliament, where those who tended to be socialist used to sit on the left, and those who tended to be capitalist used to sit on the right. So, for example, in 1950s Britain, You'd have the Conservatives here and you'd have the Labour Party here. Now, if you think of this logically, why should a political model be designed on where people sit? I would say, you might as well say that in Kingscourt Church, where I go to pray occasionally, those who sit on the right are extremely holy and religious, and Fine Gael supporters, and those who sit on the left are not as religious. They're only coming to be seen, and they all vote Fianna Fáil. I mean, that is ridiculous. You might as well say in the sale chart that everyone who keeps Aberdeen Angus cattle sits on one side of the auctioneer, and everyone who keeps Shirley cattle sits on the other. Why should where you sit, where there isn't any organisation, and even if it is organisation, why could the left, you could have an equal situation somewhere else where they sat on the left and the right, you know what I mean? It could be reversed. So the place that they're sitting should have nearly no relevance, unless it's organised deliberately like that. So some fella that organised the seating arrangements in Paris, Parliament, or France, if that's where it was, I'm not sure, he dictated this left-right spectrum. And I believe there's a fundamental flaw with it. I don't know, has anyone ever seen that? So again, I tend to be breaking out new ground. This is the political spectrum. It's the face of a clock. And just to explain to you, up here at 12 o'clock, you have dictators, despots, Robert Mugabe, Kim Jong-il, Fidel Castro, Mao Zedong. Now most of these are socialist types, although I don't know where you'd put Mugabe. But you also had President Pinochet. You had some, like Henry VIII was pretty dogmatic. You had the Tsars of Russia, and you had the French. And life under them was hard. And life under the Tsar was hard. I believe you had to spend 19 years in the Russian army as a young man, and you'd be lucky to get a bit of bread once every day. And even here in the 1940s and 50s, it was church-ridden. It was tended to be conservative. And the church tended to be anti-socialist. And Hitler was a member of the Nazi Party, the National Socialist Workers' Party. Hitler pretended to be socialist. And I had to throw that up to communists who always call me a Nazi. I say, the Nazis were socialist. National Socialist Workers' Party. So up here you have these despotic people. And they comprise left or right. They'll use any ideology. Now, as you go to move down, it moves to the right, like Victorian Britain, as you come down near Tree. Or it moves to the left, like Communist China, or Castro, where you have, in Cuba, the healthiest, poorest prisoner population you can get. Everyone's a prisoner. Nobody has any freedom. You dare not criticise the state. But you're healthy, you're healthy. You can get your bunions and your toenails cut. I mean, why can you not be healthy and be free as well? But so here is the left, really, the socialist type of moderation. And here is the right moderation. And then as you move around, you get the model I think exists only in Switzerland. And that is at 6 o'clock, where there's a good, healthy balance between the two. And Iceland used to have that healthy balance. I was up there. But I think Iceland has kind of gone a bit lefty now at the moment too. And when you bring climate change into this, you seem to shift everyone towards big government, because the climate change and the methods to deal with it are always to the left. You get very few conservatives who are for climate change. They're nearly all socialist. And I believe the reason is that there's a fault in people's logic, the inability to count, that makes them socialist. The idea that the state is the best one to supply you with your egg in the morning. And you have all this marketing, you have all this regulation, you have all this, you have an egg consumer purchaser. You have to, so by the time you get the egg and you get a cook in by the state and you get the egg cooked and you get someone else to clean up, the egg could cost €100, whereas you can cook it yourself, buy it for 50 cents and cook it for a total of €1. It's €100 using the state to do it. Because when the state gets involved, you get massive inefficiency, massive bureaucracy and massive regulation. They try to regulate for the failings of the human species. Whereas under the right-wing or the capitalist system, it regulates itself. If you're not able to do it right, you're not there. You starve. So you can see how this spectrum is like that. And down here then you get the Swiss model, where you have democracy, where there is a health service that people like. Nobody's let starve, nobody's let die of the hunger. And at the same time, you have the right to vote. You have the right to put in your politicians in and out. So that's an important point about what I believe the real politics of political spectrum is. Now, people will generally, as we know in the early United States, they went for this model. They wanted democracy. Whereas socialism is not compatible with democracy. Because when socialist starts off, you get all this state-run communism. If you have an election and they vote for a fellow over here, this is gone. And you can't get it back. So with this one, it's easy moving to socialism, even under a democratic regime. Whereas with this one, it's not easy moving to capitalism. Moving to capitalism will break this one down. Moving to socialism, moving that way, will break it down. Moving that way, if you keep your democracy, you can go back again. And that's what we're seeing in British politics. You see the swing over and back between Labour and Tories. In America, you see the Democrats, which are left, and the Republicans. And you see it in Italy, you see it in France, you see it in many countries. There's this constant tug. And into that comes another person, which is good and bad in my view, and I'll just write it here. And they're called do-gooders. So the do-gooder is somebody who wants to do good, obviously, but he wants the state to do good. And he nearly always wants it done with someone else's money, not his own. And they're all right until they get out of hand. And then they begin to look to the extreme of human rights. And they want everybody in here. They want migrants in here. Eamon Ryan put on the record of the Dáil, he wants 5 million migrants in Ireland. And most of our politicians will accept happily another million in here, easily. And they want all this LBGT, gay and lesbian and all that stuff. Now, I voted yes to same-sex marriage, but that was on an equality issue. But I do not believe it should be put in as the normal. We now have the situation where you have women's weightlifting won by men who claim to be transgender. So this do-gooder can get completely out of hand. People just want to be seen to do good. And it's not, we all want to do good, but it's brought to the excess. And the gay and lesbian and all that's brought to excess. And as they move towards up here in the left, they begin to move on up here to dictatorship. And we have moves afoot now to criminalise what I'm doing here. Make me a criminal. That I'm spreading hate speech. And who decides what's hate speech? Well, it's somebody connected with the government. And probably a left-wing judge. And this is highly dangerous. This is moving us away from our freedom. Right? But acknowledging that this is the proper political spectrum puts it all in perspective. Because if you have freedom with the hand pointing down like this, and the government goes to move up, they'll be voted out, and a new crowd from here will be voted in, and they'll bring the balance over here. Ideally, it stays at 6 o'clock, where you have the right mix. But it'll swing a bit. But you have to watch that the pressure for capitalism is by the people who have money, and they're not the majority. But the pressure for communism is usually by a mix. And it is by people who have money. I mean, George Soros is more or less a communist, very rich. Bono is more or less a communist, very rich. Mary Robinson would be kind of a communist. If you look at most of the people, the Bilderberg groups and all these, they tend to be socialist. Now, I guardedly talk about the Bilderberg group. Peter Sutherland was involved. But there are these societies running all over. They used to be the Freemasons, and and no one knows what side they're on. But you've got to watch for people making policy outside of your remit, outside voters. And you've got to watch that it's us make the policy. And in making the policy and we vote for people, we have to know what we're doing. And we have to have a good idea of the complex world we live in. But for now, I'll leave it at that. But I just want to provoke thought. I think, and you can decide whether you're right or wrong, this is what really the political spectrum is. It's not this. This is not it. It is ridiculous to decide on a policy for government as to where people were seated hundreds of years ago. It's like this. And if you go to fight against Raul Castro in Cuba at the minute, he'll send his soldiers out and kill you. And if you get the fight tight, as you go up here, he'll use more ruthlessness. And if he has to, he'll move over here. He'll do anything to hold power. Mugabe started off somewhere around here. Everyone was happy with him. And then he began to move towards taking all the land of the whites, and he drove the place into absolute chaos with inflation which ran into billions of percentage every year. And people may not have noticed he was doing that. So it's possible to destroy a whole country by using ignorance, if you can get away with it, and if there's not a way of putting you out. So as Churchill said about democracy, it's the worst system ever was tried, except every other system. In other words, it's the best of a very, very bad lot. And this threat we have at the moment, where you have a convergence of climate changers, do-gooders, unlimited immigration. In other words, when an election takes place, you are offered a menu, a manifesto. And it used to be that was for you. So we all voted for things like health and all that, and a bit of commerce and a bit of private enterprise as well as our model. We all voted for that. But now, that's still on offer from all the parties, from Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and Sinn Féin. But it's not for us. It's for the population of the Sudan, the population of Asia, of countries we never heard of in many cases, for the population of Africa, for the population of all over the world. It's for everybody except the Irish. And that's the deceit. They're telling us it's for us. It's not for us. It's for the people they plan replacing us with. And one of my last points on this, if you take Sinn Féin, Sinn Féin was founded on a grievance over British treatment, which in the past was not good. And maybe some things were good, but it wasn't all good. It was also founded on getting a united, independent, sovereign Ireland. But instead of going for that, which is what a lot of people would like to see, I'm not commenting on that myself, they shove in their communism. And the Sinn Féin party has a hard core of Trotskyites, cultural Marxism. They have voted for abortion, imagine. They want unlimited immigration. Keaveny Keelan was promoting immigration into Monaghan years and years ago. So the people who want the Brits out want everybody else in. And they're losing the vote because the Irish people are not socialist, they're not communist. So what these people do is to take the grievance that's there, and instead of trying to fix it and make the society we would like, which is a normal society of slightly conservative, Christian Democrat type of thing that we are used to, they shove in Karl Marx, Ho Chi Minh, Pol Pot, anything except give us our rights under the ballot box. But it's a two-way process. If we get our rights to use the vote, we got to put our brains behind deciding who we vote for. And at the moment, that is not there. And I don't see any hope of it soon. So this is why Sinn Féin are going downhill. They're just another left-wing party. I heard Padar Tobin himself saying, we're going to be on the left. Well, the left is go off over that way, but I don't think, just as in Britain and in the United States, I don't think the majority of my friends and neighbours and Irish people in the cities and the countries want their communist ideology. And they'll trick us for a while with climate change until we overcome that. But preserving our freedoms, which is where we want to be, which is down here around 6 o'clock, basically the Swiss model, is not easy. It's not easy. It will not be done by lying around and not thinking about it. Because our opponents, like the US Democratic Party They never lose a minute's sleep as to how they can take away all the freedoms that their country was built on. And if we don't watch that, it's going to happen to us too. And all of these windmills and all of these pylons are an ignorant reaction. The reaction of jackasses to perceived problems which in many cases don't exist. A crowd of lugs with big ideas. And the like of me who says, hold on now, don't panic, take it easy, stop all this hysteria. I am seen as a denier. I don't want en masse migration. I'm a hate person. I'm a racist. All this nonsense is given. And people have to join and decide, is this what they want? Because whatever I'm able to do, I'm certainly able to count. And we see at the moment, everywhere you go, there's nothing only foreigners. And I'm not against immigration, but we should control it and have a policy on it, and we the people should decide on it. And of course the last thing I have to say is, we don't have a party to offer to the people anyway. But I believe if we had a party that I'm describing to you, it wouldn't get many votes. And that's the problem. We got to bring this to our neighbours and friends. We got to accuse them of what they're doing. I do it all the time. I meet them after the election. You voted for Fine Gael. I know you did. And I look them in the eye and they get guilty. I can vote for who I like. Yeah, well, you're taking away the rights of people. You're destroying the country. Same with Fianna Fáil. Same with Fine Gael. Sinn Féin. Same with Sinn Féin. I was getting needled from Sinn Féiners all around Cavan and everywhere else in Monaghan until I brought up that point. You're a communist party. And that finished them. They can't open their mouth because above in Sinn Féin's offices in Dublin, it's full of cultural Marxist communists. Full of them. And they don't care about us as people, farmers or anything else. They're moving in on all this stuff, the beef situation and the farmers' plight. They are all for this green socialist agenda. And don't ever forget that. But then again, so are the rest. And until we put the foot down and say, no, we're not communists. We're centre's people, centre maybe slightly right. Until we do that, they'll keep doing it. And they'll fight us every step of the way. So thank you very much for that. Okay, bye-bye.